Hi, this is Cherie Ray. Is coexisting getting under your skin? Do you have a shorter than normal fuse? Is your tolerance for others not what it used to be? In this conversation, we will discuss how to have a greater tolerance for others near and dear to your heart, as well as your coworkers and the rest of the population. COVID has put us in isolation, and our ability to mix with the world in a collaborative way could be resting. I hope you enjoy this conversation and find many useful points. Is coexisting getting under your skin? Because it's like if in order, unless we're planning on being an island of one, which is really not the nature of life, you're eventually gonna have to interact with other humans on the planet because it's it's just not going to happen solo, especially, which is amazing, if you look at how much digital um, communication that has evolved, which has reduced the amount of human to human contact. That didn't alleviate the problem here either. We're still interacting with humans, even if it's just on the digital floor. So I think which is interesting. So this is a piece that I want to talk about this coexisting. Is it looks like um, from the outside that the situation is the problem. Okay, or too often times or the situation is the frustration. So the first part I want to address is like what first came up about people who are consistently in your life. We'll address that one first. It's like, do you notice that people that are consistently in your life over time, do you notice you don't have a constant feeling about that person? You know, it's fascinating. Like you can see them as precious. You can see them as a pain in the tuchus. You can walk through the room and have just I think it's fascinating. I want to bring that to your attention about, do you notice how you can have an inconsistent feeling toward another human being? And I think one of the most interesting things is when you see that you can have an inconsistent feeling about another human being and they haven't moved or spoken. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, so wait a minute. So maybe that feeling, that fluctuating feeling is not coming from them at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not coming from them at all, especially they can not even be in the room and you can have a fluctuating feeling toward that person. So there's really no one doing anything to you. But I want you to notice how you can have that fluctuation. I think that's one of the most fascinating things to see, that as human beings, we have a fluctuating state of consciousness, not to sound too woo-woo, but it's woo-woo. A fluctuating state of being. We could even distill it down to moods, you know. For no good reason, you'll find yourself in a great mood, in a low mood, in an anxious mood, kind of like what Sylvia was saying, in the sense of like, man, for no good reason, I am just, and I can't tie it to anything. So, so what I wanted to put that in is to really know that we have a fluctuation of our level of consciousness on the inside, and that fluctuation is what is it's kind of our operating system in that moment. Okay, what I mean by that, it's like, okay, so when we're in a higher state of consciousness or a higher state of mind where we feel, I'll say higher state of mind is equivalent to feeling more loving. Okay, lower state of consciousness is when you're feeling um, irritated, judgmental, authoritative, right in the land of the right and the wrong, and when we're in that place, we're certainly on the side of the right. And because we definitely see where the aspect of wrong is. So with that in mind, it's like we can get onto ourselves that we have this fluctuation of consciousness inside us all the time for no good reason. We can even tie it back to no good reason. You're just going to have these fluctuations for no good reason because we take in data all the time. You know what I mean? We take in data all the time. We have chemistry in our body. Oftentimes we think it has to be directly related to a thought I had a minute ago. And it's like, we just are kind of in a soup of all of that. And there's energy that's flowing through our body. So this energy fluctuates as well. So I think it'd be a great place to kind of play in, following this call and as you go out in the world to be kind of introspective and reflective about how you have these fluctuations just inside you for no good reason. As like a foundational piece, just to notice the fluctuations. Because if it's somebody that's consistently in your life, it's a really good benchmark because to start this process of becoming aware of this fluctuation, because it's not really as much of a moving part. You really see that over time you've had that range of feelings toward that person, and you know and you get a chance to really just observe how you've had that fluctuation. Now, so that's what's kind of the foundational piece of step one is like, man, if people are getting on my nerves or I'm having a tough time coexisting, first of all, they don't need to show up different for me to be okay. Because that feeling of the irritation and all that is just coming from the state of consciousness you're in that moment. And so I'll repeat that part about like when we're in higher states of consciousness, we're loving, accepting, we're cruising through life. Things just aren't, say, like for instance, someone who's constant in your life, they're just not on your mind as a problem, or a situation is just, it's not even on your mind. But in those dips of lower levels of consciousness, they could cough, and you'd be irritated going, oh my God, why do you blow your nose like that? That just makes me crazy. Simple things like that. But that's that feeling state of like when you feel like you're getting prickly, or you just really see yourself getting incredibly judgmental, you're in kind of that lower fluctuation. You're in that dip. Okay. Now, the best thing to know is that this fluctuation is happening with you or without you, with your mind on it or without your mind on it. If you're looking at it or you're not looking at it, it's still fluctuating. But you have a sense or a feeling that shows up for you when it gets your attention. And typically it gets your attention when you're, when you're chewing them up or chewing up the situation. You see that you've kind of taken a dip and you're in that judgmental, this is wrong, this shouldn't be happening state of being. Now, what can be most helpful is I'm not saying don't take action on things in your life. I'm just saying you can kind of maintain your side of the road and see where you are. And see and allow yourself to ride that fluctuation out, to feel it, just ride it out and notice that you can be up and down all day long. And what's going to typically happen is if it's a situation that does need your attention to be corrected, and it's life, we have situations that need to be corrected. If you want to truly be collaborative when to correct a situation, it's best to wait until you come back up. Now, the urgency, the compellingness of it will happen when you're in that judgmental, irritated place. That's like a knee jerk. You just want to, it's got to happen now. Well, if it's not bleeding and it's not a 911 moment, it doesn't have to happen right now. And really, if it was a 911 moment, you wouldn't have time to think about it. You'd be in full action. You'd be taking action. So, so with that in mind, sometimes life can feel like such a roller coaster, and we get overwhelmed by so many happenings, especially these days, like just going out into the world. It seems like you can't read an email without bad news and news with bad news and more devastation and all of that kind of stuff. So we have so much coming at us all the time, so much coming at us all the time that that fluctuation could probably even be a less smooth ride. It might just be up and down, up and a little more herky jerky, but it's still the same mechanics on the inside of you. They're going to go up and down. This thing is never, ever going to be like an elevator that gets stuck between floors. It's always going to be moving. Your mind is definitely going to say, when it's at the lower end of the scale, it's going to say you're stuck. There's something wrong with you. Why is this the way it is? I feel like, I need to take action now. But if you know the nature of life is not stagnant. Life is energy moving all the time. All the time. It's energy moving all the time. So it's like, wow, if we have such a help, if we can get on ourselves and get onto the system we're living in, I really believe we don't have as much wear and tear on ourselves, A, and B, we don't have as many messes to clean up. And I think that makes a whole lot less work for us to have to go back and clean up messes if we ride out those lows. When we come back up, we're going to have a really, really, either A, it's not even going to be on our mind, or B, we're going to have a fresher, higher functioning solutions will come from a higher state of mind. That's like the physics of human being. A higher level of consciousness, a higher state of mind brings higher functioning, brings higher quality solutions. Guaranteed. So as we ride that roller coaster of life, like I said, so much stuff is coming at us. It's like, if we know this is happening, basically we have the opportunity to really get out of the roller coaster, find a nice bench, and just watch the fluctuations. Just take it more in stride and sit on the bench and allow those fluctuations to go, knowing you don't have to be beaten up by the ride, because it's going to move and you're not the one that's going to have to move it. Because life is moving, life is energy, and it's going to move. So, in that place of, like, I guess a second piece would be that, no, I'm going to hold that. I want to hear if there's anything you're hearing from that before I say something else, or anything that you have a question on from that, about that fluctuation, or about solutions, or taking action. or anything you've noticed about that fluctuation?
That was very powerful. And what I think I notice about myself in those fluctuations is my judgment about myself in how much fluctuation there is. There's the self judgment of, why can't you be more balanced? You know, you were just in a great mood. Now you're crying. You know, yesterday was a fabulous day. Now today you want to take your life. I mean, it's my judgments of interpreting the highs and the lows that is not necessary.
Spot on. I couldn't, spot on. It's like if we just knew that these fluctuations were completely natural and part of the system, just like weather changes. And how can we just take weather changes in stride? We do it all the time. And knowing that, so often our mind makes up that I must be doing something wrong to feel like this. If I could get it right, I wouldn't feel like this. Like, no, it's just fluctuations of consciousness that nobody ever told us about. And more times than not, our mind makes us, the me in this meat suit, the problem. And it's not. It's not. That is such a great point. That is such a great point. That we just didn't ever get a manual on that. And we live in that fluctuation all the time.
Well, it is, we, have so much grace, I think. I mean, I do, at least in others, when they're in a bad mood and then a good mood. Like, I don't really judge others about that. But I don't know why I have to have such an incredible judgment of myself about it. Because when I'm in a bad mood, I'm just like, well, I don't want anybody to see me or talk to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, others, when they're in a bad mood, I'm just a little bit more mellow, or, don't talk as much, recognize they're not in their joyful state. And if it's a close friend and they want to share, they will, but I'm also not prying them or judging them. You know what I mean? It's like, if I could just be that way with myself. But you're right, I don't think we were taught that. There's always all this talk about, well, are you depressed, or do you have anxiety, like that there's something wrong, or do you have bipolar order, and that means that you're either high and you're low, instead of, no, you're high and you're low because you're a spiritual human being. Oh, okay, I don't need medicine for this. I mean, that gives you some, at least gives me now some, like, okay, why did we create such drama about that? I mean, what do you think that caused all of that?
I think innocently enough. Also, I like to think of it in a way of like medicine. What made sense in medicine 100 years ago doesn't make sense in medicine today. What made sense in medicine 10 years ago doesn't make sense today. So I think it's really an evolution and evolving of understanding that human beings are, spiritual, intellectual, and we're energy. We're all of that. We're all of that. And the innocently people are trying to, I think, innocently people are trying to alleviate human suffering. And it's like, but if we, through behaviors, through trying to address the behavior. And I'm like, well, if we just understood more about the human being, behaviors are going to be completely different. If you think about it, if you can ride this fluctuation, you're going to be less reactive moment to moment. You'll be less reactive. And so what comes to mind to you will be very different from a higher state of consciousness. And the big leverage is, to me, the biggest leverage is, it's like, okay, and I know you guys have heard me say this a million times, like, how can I just get more comfortable with these temporary states of discomfort, of being uncomfortable? How can I just get a little more comfortable with being uncomfortable? It's like, sometimes who hasn't? I don't know. Maybe y'all haven't, but I've said I can't tell you I hadn't been one of those people that stood in front of the refrigerator looking for something to help me feel better. But we're in a population where people reach outside of themselves for something to feel better, Anything. It could be anything. It could be, you know, anything could be overused to self-medicate. And it's like, wow, if I just knew that this energy was going to keep moving with me or without me, and I can just ride out the discomfort, and knowing that there's a source of wisdom inside you that is taking care of it. And maybe you do feel like taking a walk. Great. Maybe you do want to eat a bag of chocolate almonds. Great. So what? But you have an understanding of I don't need the chocolate almonds, but I just like them. I know I'll feel better at some point in time, and it won't happen soon enough, but you ride the lows, and then your mind's not on yourself, usually on the highs. But it's so normal. It doesn't need a diagnosis. It just needs understanding that these fluctuations happen. Because I promise you, in any day's time, you could code me all day long with some sort of psychological disorder, just because we're all over the place. I'm not making light of psychiatry or psychology at all. I'm not doing that. I'm just saying that we're fluctuating beings, and um, the irritation we feel like that's coming at us from the world or from other people is what I'm making of this moment in time, and that's going to be strongly influenced by your level of consciousness at that moment. And it truly is not related to if you're getting it right as a human being, as you being a worthwhile human being. No, no. You were born a worthwhile human being. You were born the whole enchilada. There is nothing broken inside you. We have a lot of misunderstandings, but you're not broken. A lot of misunderstandings. So, any comments or anything? Yes.
Question. So, another source of occasional irritation is with my friend and roommate that I'm living with. And recently we had a disagreement that we resolved the disagreement, but for me, it left some permanent hurt feelings that I don't know what to do with and how to clear it. We got back to our normal state of friendship, but there's just this little piece of me in my heart that still holds a little bit of resentment and pain, and causes me to be a little less open and a little bit more cautious of how I communicate with that person in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't know what to do with that piece.
I really wouldn't do anything with that piece.
Okay.
I wouldn't do anything with that piece because, what can happen? What can happen is when we have those altercations with someone incredibly close to us, that kind of, I don't know, were you surprised by it? Some of what came up?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes when we get incredibly surprised by some of those altercations, what happens truly is our illusion of our relationship gets a crack.
Mm.
You know, we held it in our mind in a certain way, and then life in real time comes up and gives us a little bit of course correction, or kind of shows another facet that we just didn't see, and it feels like it's irrevocable and it's broken, but really it's like no, really my illusion of the relationship kind of got a wake up call, you know. Not that
Yeah.
anybody's good, not that anybody's bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it just kind of cracks our illusion.
Mm-hmm. It totally makes sense. Yeah.
Because we're all exactly the same on the inside, you know, underneath our
Right.
personalities, we're exactly the same. We all possess the exact energy of life,
Right.
you know. So it, yeah, it gets a little chink in our Polaroid, and we're like, that's usually when you want to go in and cut them all out of the pictures. Yeah.
I think the word that comes from me listening to what Sylvia said is recalibration. It recalibrates the relationship.
Hmm.
The friendship.
Yeah.
What I know about kind of friendship is that how I value it and view it can be totally different from what the other person in the relationship views it. You know, I may have more chips in the pool, and that person doesn't have as many chips.
Absolutely. And that's part of that kind of illusion that gets
Right.
cracked or woken up, you know. It's like, oh man, I had you on my ride or die list. Put me on your, you know, number 57. It's like, whoa, you know. The great thing to do is not to beat yourself up going, how did I get it so wrong? What's wrong with me that I held it here? You know, and it's like, no, stay out of that. That would be like going back to turning on yourself about having fluctuating states of consciousness. You know, don't turn on yourself. It's like that's that opportunity to have compassion for you know, we're human beings with fluctuating energy, fluctuating states of consciousness, fluctuating emotional states. That is the nature of being human. And it's just like, don't turn on yourself. It's like, where else are we going to get some of that unconditional love, compassion for, you know, putting our foot in it or putting our foot in our mouth or all the stuff that just happens with being human? Where are we going to get that loving acceptance? If we turn on ourselves, please don't turn on yourself. Everybody's doing the same thing you're doing, trying to, you know, move their life down the road. But that's a great example. I appreciate you bringing that up. Don't try to solve anything, you know, just really relax. And at best, I say, this isn't an absolute, this isn't an absolute, but at best, just try to be in the present moment with the person. Because your mind's going to want to drag in every hurt and bobo and infraction. It's out there busily collecting evidence to support your bobo. It's working hard. So it's like, wait a minute. I don't want to hold on to it. Let me just, you know, try to be a dry erase board, clean the board, and you know, and if the best you can do is just sit present and still have a yang in your head, so what? But you're making an effort to be present with this person and not hold so much between you. That's one of the things the mind does. It always wants to collect evidence in places where we've been hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that should be a webinar. It's like how our mind is really a Freemason that wants to support our bruises, you know, keeping them bruised. It really wants to keep us our bruises sore.
That's true. That's true.
Anything else, anybody? Yes, please.
What would be another word for illusion in that scenario? You say a crack in your illusion.
I'd say
Your definition of what the relationship is.
yep.
Expectation, yeah.
Yep. Your definition of friendship, you know, how your state of mind about this person. How about that? Your mindset about this person.
Okay.
You know, you can
And
have
it
a mind.
really doesn't have anything to do with the other person.
Say that one
Right.
more time, please.
It doesn't have anything to do with the other person.
You tell me. What do you think?
No, I don't think so.
I don't either.
Well, it feels better when I think about it like that, that if it's on my side of the fence, then I go, oh, okay, it was my bad. I made up this. And
Mhm.
yeah.
Because it's like it's on your side of the street. Here's a great kind of delineator. It's on your side of the street if it is not universal. Okay, so like gravity is universal. If it doesn't work the same for everybody, every human being, it's on your side of the street. You know, I love that saying. I love this saying about and I heard these guys do it one time. It was so great. It was like these guys were all together. I was always kind of one of the guys, but it's like in this pack of guys, and this incredibly hot woman walks past, you know, hot woman. And one of the guys goes, you know what? As hot as she is, there's some guy out there that's sick of her. So it's like, you know, as gloriously beautiful as she was on the outside, it wasn't universal. Not everybody viewed her the same, you know. So it's going to be very much. Otherwise, it's on your side of the street.
Oh, that's funny.
It's on your side of the street.
Well, yeah, but what's on the other side of the street? I mean, you know, it looks to me like it's all your side of the street. I mean,
Now you're onto something. You know what? Because how you see the world is how you see the world. And that's on your side of the street, you know?
yeah,
How you see a human being is how you see that human being. That human being is it's just underneath their personality. They're the whole enchilada just like you. I'm not saying you got to be around them or you got to do anything with them. I'm just saying underneath their personality, they're the same as you. You know, illusion, perception, expectation, how you see
well,
mindset.
yeah. Well, when I move it into me, you know, if I move, I go, it was my illusion, didn't have anything to do with somebody else. Is what then I go, oh, okay. You know, if it's about somebody else, you know, like then it becomes a crack in how I see that person. Well, it doesn't really have anything to do with that person. I think, I don't know. I'm just making this up, but that's how it. But when I see it that way, like, oh, this is my deal. You know, this is my. Then it's then for some reason it's like, oh, okay. A crack in an illusion seems like, I don't know. It seems like damaging or something. But if it's a crack in my illusion, then it's like, oh, well, you know, that's just another another thought or whatever, you know.
Yeah. It's kind of like you know, we just grab words to try to describe something, you know. So it's like whatever words work for you to describe,
yeah
you know, seeing something you didn't see before, or just, you know, having your heart broken that something happened that you just couldn't imagine, you know, wasn't even in your reality. You know what I'm saying? It's like I had a friend once that something happened and it kicked me on my heels because it wasn't even in my reality on how I held that person.
Mhm.
So it wasn't. It really kicked me back on my heels because I just
Mhm.
not in my wildest dreams. So that's kind of like it's almost like it wasn't even really a break in the illusion because it wasn't in my illusion to start out with.
Oh, yeah.
But somewhere underneath it, I imagine I didn't. It wasn't even conscious that something like that could happen. So it can surprise you.
Mhm. Oh, now it gets muddy again.
Oh, wow.
For me. Oh, it's okay. It's not a big deal. It's this too will pass.
Yeah, but the simple point that you see that it's like there's more on my side of the street than I realized.
Oh yeah, yeah, and that's yeah, that's I can appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, Cherie, if a person has been exposed to this sort of thinking over a longer period of time, does it get easier?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. It does get easier because kind of when we have a conversation about what is universally true about human beings, when we have a conversation, and we've talked about this, how it really does launch a learning curve for you because truth wants to find truth.
Mm.
I think it does.
Yeah, I would agree too.
Especially when we can just take in the information and take it to heart versus take it to my head to try to figure out. If we take it to our head to try to figure it out, it's going to be purely an intellectual exercise. If you just take it to heart, consider it, even kind of look around and see if there's anywhere you notice that that's true, in a very just matter of fact, relaxed kind of state, it's like, but even that little bit of taking it to heart and considering it launches that learning curve. And then the depth of your wisdom starts to ping you with fresh information or an insight or like, oh, and even you may not even be able to articulate it, but it's like, it's so cool when just something feels different in the same situation. And you're like, kind of like, something feels different here, but everything looks the same. Even those little bitty nuances, those little bitty feelings are proof positive that the learning curve is continuing on. Even if you just feel a little more relaxed around somebody that you at one time you were really tense about, or you lost your footing around somebody, and then now you're even a tiny bit less off balance, or some words pop out of your mouth that you didn't script. You know what I mean? But words just came. You didn't think, you just spoke, and words come. It's like, wow. So that's this beautiful system that's working on your behalf, and it's outside of your intellect. You don't need to enlist the intellect. That's one of the hardest things to share because our mind wants to grab it. It's the same mind that wants to, grab all that evidence to keep your bruises hurting, And it's not our enemy. It's just knowing what it does, just kind of understanding.
I think what's I think is a real gift in thinking of, and I'm not saying I do this, you understand, but the in like the same thing that can just have you chewing on something can have you, you can use that for what you were talking about, looking for those nuances, those little differences in how you see something. If I could switch my mind from ragging on something to gathering that kind of information, it's then I could have appreciation for it, maybe, or maybe not. I'm not sure. But yes.
Oh, that's a practice right there. Like, wait a minute, I wish I had my little piece of paper. I don't know. I have this little piece of paper that I keep around my computer, and it's like, it just says, look around and see all that's going right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's just a wonderful little message, because our minds, or at least mine, could always be looking, is always kind of been on the assignment to point out what's wrong. My mind has always been on that assignment, and my mind has always been on that assignment to point out what I'm doing wrong and how wrong I am, and how broken I am, and how unacceptable to civilization I am, So I'm just aware that's kind of where my conditioned mind tends to point. And I tell you, it's so refreshing to look away to see there's a choice to look away from that. It's not going to go away. It still wants to make me the problem when something doesn't go right. But I just, I choose not to listen to it. And then slowly, it's like the GPS is going to be pointing in a different direction versus, you're a problem I just can't solve.
What, Cherie, do you think is the best active way to change that mindset? It's one thing to know that this goes on and be aware of it. It's another, to catch yourself doing it. But what's a productive way to shift out of that thinking? Is it doing affirmations? Is it journaling? Is it doing, neurofeedback? What's the way to train a better thought process?
You know what? That I don't think we need to worry about training for a better thought process if we just saw it as we have a mind that thinks. We have a mind that is actively generating tons and tons of thinking, and we can let those thoughts go by. It's gonna always think. It's gonna always think. It's gonna always think. I like that somebody said this to me the other day, and I just loved it. And it was like, if you're standing on the outside of on the feeder road, and you're looking at a freeway, there were zillions of cars, say it's a California highway, and you're standing on the service road, but traffic is moving. And it's like all of those cars are just thoughts going by. But if you have a bobo, a bruise, or something about red cars, you'll catch those red cars. You know what I mean? You're going to notice those red cars going by versus the silver ones or the whatever, so it's like just knowing that our mind is a mental freeway of thought, and that the stuff that I notice that's passing through is still just mental thought that can pass through.
And that's a real good point, Cherie, because our tendency is to want to fix it, to want to fix those thoughts.
Yes.
And the more we can accept them, the less they will have impact on us.
I like the idea too of not accepting them, but just letting them pass.
Yeah.
The more you allow them to let them pass, that you don't need to address them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Allowing is the right word. Yeah.
Just they'll go. You'll be less susceptible to the red cars. after a while.
Mhm.
Until your level of consciousness drops, and then you're going to be really susceptible to the red cars. But it's still just the freeway of thought. And that way you can have those fluctuating moods and be more graceful with them, because, you'll catch on that, you just didn't notice the red cars when you were in a higher mood. Yes.
It's like thought trying to control thought.
Good
and
luck.
and and there's like no win. It's just like kind of a spinning thing, I think, because there's never any. So
No.
it's like, I don't know. It's a funny concept in a way. It's like when you think about it.
Yeah. It's like, because you can't control what you think. You can't control that you think. We're thinking creatures. So what? But we do have some choice in how much of our thinking we pay attention to. That's why people love to meditate, or hate to meditate.
Oh,
Some like to get a break from their mind, and others can't meditate because they can't get their thoughts off their mind. So it's not a good or bad thing. It's just showing that think how many zillions of thoughts. I don't know who did that research about how many gazillions of thoughts a human being thinks in a day. It's like, what if we latched on to every one of those? We would be, spinning like a top.
probably couldn't function.
We couldn't.
Wouldn't be able to function.
We couldn't. So anyway, I hope the conversation was helpful, and in seeing that you have this fluctuating state of being and that you're gonna feel different throughout the day. It doesn't mean anything about you. It doesn't mean you're a problem child. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're human, normal, natural, and that you can allow yourself to just be curious about how to be more graceful with the lows, because your own innate wisdom, intuition, whatever you want to say it, call it, will support you in receiving fresh information on how to be more graceful with the lows and suffer less. Yes.
Can I share this poem,
Please.
brief poem by Mary Oliver?
Please.
Because it's so appropriate. It's called I Worried. I worried a lot. Will the garden grow? Will the rivers flow in the right direction? Will the earth turn as it was taught? And if not, how shall I correct it? Was I right? Was I wrong? Will I be forgiven? Can I do better? Will I ever be able to sing? Even the sparrows can do it. And I am, well, hopeless. Is my eyesight fading, or am I just imagining it? Am I going to get rheumatism, lockjaw, dementia? Finally, I saw that worrying had come to nothing and gave it up, and took my old body and went out into the morning and sang.
Perfect.
That's great.
As people were talking, I'm like, there it is. It's just, her words are so wonderful.
And she so captures the human condition.
Exactly.
She captures the universal human condition, So what she addresses is like gravity to all human beings. Everybody has touched that spot. And that's the humanness that we all possess, that can we be more caring, compassionate, and understanding to that which is universal in all of us.
Well, this was great, Cherie. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming to this conversation and making it such a rich conversation. I really, really appreciate it. And God, thanks. Have a wonderful Mother's Day for all of you who are nurturing something in the world. And have a great time. And thank you for coming. And I hope to see you on the next one. Okay. Thank you for listening. It was great to share this information with you. Please share this recording to anyone you feel could benefit. My name is Cherie Ray, and I help people eliminate struggle in their lives and businesses. If COVID has taught us anything, it has taught us to really appreciate this gift of life. If you'd like support in eliminating struggle in your life and really take the opportunity to start living, let's connect. You can reach me at cherieray.com or by calling or texting to 832-545-8488. And please share this conversation with anyone you feel like could use the support. Thank you.